Okaeri, welcome back to my channel, Made Between the Pages. My name is Taylor, and today we're going to be doing the bar and bookcase tag. I was tagged to do this by Eric over on Break Even Books, and I was so glad that he tagged me because this is actually pretty perfect for my channel. If you don't know, I do mixology as kind of like a hobby in my free time, and so I actually have some videos on my channel called Booktube Bartender, where I make drinks for characters in the books that I love. The two up on my channel right now are for Six of Crows, so if you're interested, please go check those videos out. I tell you how to make the drinks, as well as why I think the drinks match these particular characters. I'm really excited for the next installment of that as well, but I haven't found a day yet in my schedule that works for filming it, but I do want to get around to filming the next one soon because, like I said, I'm super excited for the characters I'm going to be doing in the next one. But in the meantime, I figured why not go ahead and do this tag. The first prompt is old-fashioned, a historical fiction recommendation. Now, I love me an old-fashioned. I am a huge fan of that classic drink. Give me a nice rye whiskey with a little bit of Angostura bitters and a big peel of orange. I'm in heaven. This is a very classic drink. It has a long history, so it makes a lot of sense that this would be for a historical fiction recommendation. For this one, I decided to go with Circe by Madeline Miller. Now, this book is like a cross between a bunch of different genres. I assume it's like historical fiction, I don't really know, literary fiction. This is a very weird cross-section of genres, but I'm pretty sure that it could be considered historical fiction. And I love this book. It doesn't hurt that it's absolutely beautiful. I don't know if you've seen the naked hardcover as well, the hardback, but it's also stunning. This UK edition is so far superior to the US version. It's like almost insulting. But anyway, I love this book for more than just its gorgeous outside. The inside is also gorgeous. So this is the story of Circe, who is kind of a minor character in other stories that you've seen for Greek mythology. Madeline Miller takes this side character and gives her her own story. Circe is a god, so she is immortal. So this book really goes through process of like self-growth. It's got a lot of feminist themes running through it, about finding, you know, what works for you, the life that works for you, and just kind of standing in your truth. And it's just beautifully written. It's poetic. It's gorgeous. I read this a couple years ago, so it's been a while, but I remember when I finished it, I just kind of sat there and had to process all the things that I had just taken in for a little while. So it has a lot of thematic work going on, and also the atmosphere is, you know, beautifully written. You can really imagine where Circe is, the island that she lives on. It's just, yeah, the atmospheric aspect of this book is also amazing. So I would highly recommend this if you want something that'll make you think a little bit and also is very immersive in the world of Greek mythology. The next prompt is for a sidecar, which is a strong supporting character. I actually made this drink in one of my Booktube Bartender videos. I actually made an old-fashioned in one of those as well. So if you're interested in how to make them, like I said, you can check those out. But I'm also a big fan of a sidecar. This drink has a sugar rim, and I'm a huge fan of when sugar rims are on drinks. So I have a soft spot for this particular drink. But I also love me a strong side character. I'm a huge character-based reader. If I don't like the characters in your story, it's going to be pretty hard for me to connect to it. So having strong side characters is a very important point for me. I'm actually going to give two answers for this, and both of them for kind of similar reasons. The first one is The Fires of Vengeance by Evan Winter. This is the second book in the Burning series, the first one being The Rage of Dragons here behind me. This book in particular, the second installment, really hit this on the head for me. The main character, Tao, in the first and the second book, he's very headstrong. He's really dumb at points. He makes really bad decisions. And that is necessary for his character because his character really propels the plot, and without his character kind of being who he is, the story wouldn't work. But he's not the most fun to read about just him. Like, if he existed in a vacuum, he wouldn't be very enjoyable to read from. It's the way that his strong personality works with and bounces off of the supporting characters in this story that really make it as amazing as it is. I don't want to give away any specific, secondary character names, because I don't want to give away who lives, who dies, in the first book. But I think that the people that surround him in this book really make the book as amazing as it is. Just a quick summary in case you don't know what this is about. This is an adult African-based fantasy where our main character, Tao, is basically the bottom rung of society. They have a very strict caste system, and he is of the lowest caste. And then something happens in his life that changes his ambitions from just basically living a nice life at home with the woman that he loves into being just a vessel for vengeance and revenge. That's the name of this book. This book really explores the mental toll that having your main goal being revenge, the mental toll that takes on you. This book really explores that theme very deeply, but also the fighting scenes are amazing. It's a military fantasy, so the fighting scenes are fantastic. We spend a lot of page time in fighting scenes. So if you like that and you like a strong cast of supporting characters, at least in this second book, I would argue, this is probably a series that's up your alley. Gotcha. The next book I'm going to do for this prompt is A Man Called Uva. Now, I realized that I've been pronouncing the name wrong. I've been saying Ove for a long time, but it's actually Uva. This book, I haven't talked about it for a little while on my channel, but a couple months ago, it was around my channel a lot. I love this book. I adore it. It touched my soul. I've never read a book by Frederick Bachman that I don't like. I also loved Beartown by him, but A Man Called Uva is the one that really struck a chord with my soul. And this book is about an old man, Uva, who isn't quite sure if life is worth it anymore. We enter at a very dark time in his life, but the supporting characters around him are incredible. They are the ones that let Uva kind of expose the softer interior that he has hidden behind his rough exterior. And without these characters, the story just wouldn't exist. So this is another book where the supporting characters are just phenomenal. The third prompt is Manhattan, a book set in New York. I'm not a huge fan of Manhattans, but I think that's because I haven't had one made with a nice sweet vermouth. I know there are some brand names out there that really supposedly add a lot of depth to the cocktail, but I think I've pretty much only had ones made with standard, lower grade sweet vermouths. So I would like to try one made with nicer ingredients and see how I feel about it, because I am a whiskey fan. But regardless, the drink is very classy, very classic as well, and it makes sense to have the namesake be after the metropolis that is Manhattan in New York. Now, when I was thinking about books that I've read that are based in New York, I could think of none except this one. And this is a book that I haven't finished. I had the audiobook and then my time ran out before I could finish the audiobook, and I just haven't picked it back up again. But that is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. I loved the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin, so I have a feeling I'm gonna love this book when I finally pick it back up again. But this is a book about New York. It's actually about characters who become the personification of different boroughs of New York, and they protect the city from nefarious forces. I only got about 30% through before I ended up having to return it, but this book, you can't get more New York than this book. The point of this book is to transport you to New York, and as someone who has been to New York City quite a few times, I would say the portrayal is very accurate. I don't know the ins and outs of New York. I've only gone there to visit, but each time I have gone, the experience that I had is very closely mirrored in this book. The fourth prompt is A Bloody Mary, a book that scared you or messed you up. Now, Bloody Marys are not my thing. I do not like tomato juice. No, thank you. I'll just cut a tomato and eat it in my salad. I don't need it juiced. So this is not my drink of choice. I am trying to make one that I like through experimenting. You know, like I said, in my free time, I'm a big fan of hot sauce. So if I lean heavier on the hot sauce end, a little bit less of the tomatoes, some more spices, I think I could get on board with the drink. But when it comes to the standard kind of cocktail recipe for it, not my thing. But I do know quite a few people who swear by this drink, whether it be hair of the dog the next day or just to feel healthier or feel like you're almost having a meal rather than a cocktail. There are people who really swear by this. Especially when you get those versions where there's like a whole meal on top of the glass, like you get like a mini slider and shit with it. That's insane to me. That's just brunch, you know, on a glass instead of a plate. But I could see people really liking that aspect of it too. So I guess it's just to each your own. The book I chose for this one is Pretty Girls, a thriller by Karen Slaughter. This was when I was first getting into thrillers, and I had heard that this book was dark, was creepy, was, you know, a lot, but I figured, oh, you know, it'll be fine. This book goes places that many books would not dare go. The subjects breached and the crimes committed in this book are horrendous. And this is coming from someone who loves crime and true crime stuff. I love watching documentaries on Netflix. I love the show Criminal Minds. Like, I dig this type of stuff. But this book it goes places. It takes you places. And I would be prepared for that when you pick it up. I give this a really high rating. I think I ended up giving it 4 or 4.5 stars because you think it's not going to go there and then it goes there. And you're like, well, that happened, you know? And as a reader, that can be a really enjoyable moment, even if it's like in a gruesome way, and you know, in the case of this book. But this book, yeah, it messed me up. When I finished the book, I was like, okay, we're gonna read something happy for a couple days because, yeah, the scenes are very graphic. It sticks in your head. Yeah, this book messed me up. For thrillers, I think it's best to go in mostly blind, but a brief summary would be that our main character, she's very wealthy and so is her husband, but her husband has passed away, and so she has to, you know, deal with the aftermath of that. And we basically enter the story where she's going through all of the things that they own and trying to figure out what to do with them in the aftermath of his passing. And we just start from there. Things are not what they seem. Let's just leave it at that. This next prompt is for an espresso martini, and this is for a book that kept you up reading all night. Not a huge fan of martinis because gin is not my drink of choice, and I've heard that a well-made martini is just gin with a slight splash of vermouth, but I do love espresso and I love coffee, so I would be really interested to actually see if I like this and how the like herbaceous aspect of gin, how that would mix with coffee, especially smell-wise. That would be really interesting. But no, I've never had this drink, but I would definitely want to try it. As for books that kept me up all night, though, I read one just this month, and that is The Black Coast by Mike Brooks. This was a highly anticipated book on my channel. I really felt like I would love this book, and I was spot on. I loved this book. I gave this 5 glowing stars. It was incredible. I could not put this book down. It had been a long time since I'd felt like I wanted to get home from work so I could read. You know, like my goal was to get home so I could pick this book up, you know, and it'd been a long time since I'd had that feeling. So this book takes place in a world where there are multiple different societies or different, what's the word I'm looking for? Groups? That's not the word I'm looking for. Groups of people living in one place. We'll go with society for now. Editing Taylor, if you can think of the word you want, put it on the screen. So we follow 3 different groups. One of them is in a more traditional European kind of fantasy setting. Another one seems to be very based in Viking culture. And then another society is basically like a melting pot. It's a bunch of groups of people all together. We follow 4 main perspectives in this book. One of the perspectives is a young adopted son who is kind of in this coastal town in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, but that's where a lot of this book actually takes place, because one of our other perspectives is a chieftain from this Viking-like group, and she is coming to this coastal town where they've raided for years and years and years and years. But at this point, she's actually coming to try to settle here. I won't tell why or anything like that because it's a big part of the story, but essentially she's coming and offering peace rather than the typical death that they bring with them. So through these 2 perspectives, there's a lot of exploration of if 2 groups that have such hatred and violence as their history, if they can, or even should they, reconcile those differences. So that's 2 of the perspectives. The other 2 are the sister of the God King, who sits on the throne of like the more European-based place. And she is very vicious. Basically, she's the one that keeps him on the throne. So she lives a lot of double lives and things like that. So we follow her as she's on a mission. You'll find out what the mission is, but a mission in the underground in the other group, the other place. I forget the name of it. Oh man, I'm terrible with names even of places, but the non-European based other place that's like a melting pot, she is on a mission there. And also there in that group is a young thief who is our 4th perspective, or main perspective anyway. And she is a thief living on the streets. And we follow her as she decides to pickpocket the wrong person. And we see where it goes from there. There are also dragons in this book, and this is not like your typical fantasy dragons. These dragons are handled almost like How to Train Your Dragon. There's different types, they have different personalities. It's so good. I highly, highly recommend this book. It's amazing. Also in the melting pot group, it's baked into their language and their culture that people don't assume anyone else's gender. So there's an inflection used to indicate what you identify as. And until that person uses the inflection to gender themselves, people don't assume your gender. And it's so interesting to see that baked into a community. It's not a change that's happening. It is already there. And to see other characters have to come to this place and where this is a part of life and adjust to that, it's so well written, guys. This was not supposed to be a review, so I'm gonna stop myself. But I stayed up until 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning finishing this book because I could not put it down. So this is my espresso martini. The next prompt is a Sazerac, or a book that left you disoriented. I've never had a Sazerac before, although I do love myself a rye whiskey as a base in a drink. Not a huge fan of absinthe. I don't like the taste of licorice. But I've never had one, so, you know, don't knock it before you try it. But I can see why, you know, this is a disoriented prompt, because absinthe is known to disorient you in high quantities. So for this one, I'm going to choose another thriller, and that is The Roanoke Girls. This is a thriller, but not in a very typical sense. This book is just, it left me feeling slimy, greasy, just gross after I read it. I was glad I read it, but it was such a, you know, feeling book that I didn't really know what to do with myself after I put this down. I remember I was just kind of like, oh, I feel gross. I need to take a shower. Like, I felt very disoriented in my own life after finishing this book. So this book is about a young girl who's 15. Again, you know, I don't know character names. Our main character, she's 15, and her mother has committed suicide. So she ends up moving back to her grandparents' house, kind of in the middle of nowhere, a very countryside estate, and she ends up living with them. And while living with them, she starts to discover the darkness that exists in her family, and she has to make, you know, choices along the way. And yeah, it's gross, but not in a gory way at all. It's just, like I said, it makes you feel like you need to take a shower. But it was very well written. I enjoyed it. It just left me disoriented. This next prompt is a Long Island iced tea, a book that is doing too much, but bonus points if it works anyway. So Long Island iced tea is absolutely doing too much, but somehow they don't taste bad. It's pretty incredible. But no one's ordering a Long Island iced tea like, I'm just gonna sip a little bit tonight and just, you know, chill on my couch. No one makes a Long Island iced tea for a night like that. It's for a night when you want to go out and you want to do some shit, you know? So I think this is a great prompt, and I have the perfect book for this. For me, that is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. The reason I say that about this book is because you don't know what is happening for the first 3 to 4, maybe 5 chapters of this book. You just have to trust that this book is taking you on a journey you want to go on. And I can tell you it is, you know, you just have to trust it. But there's so much going on in the beginning of this: city names, character names, you know, histories, you know, references to things in the book that you don't know what they are yet. There's just a lot going on at once in the beginning of this book. I haven't reread it, so I'm excited to reread it with the knowledge of having read the whole series as it's released thus far anyway. Scott Lynch, we're still waiting. Just saying. But I would be excited to go back into this and see if it still has that kind of feeling to it. But when you read it for the first time, it is overwhelming. Everything makes sense, and the way that Scott Lynch pulls all the plot points together, the stuff in the beginning is just as important, you know, as, you know, later in the book. So it's absolutely an amazing book. It's one of my favorites, but it does have a lot going on, especially in the beginning. This book follows Locke Lamora, who was orphaned at a very young age, and he grew up on the streets. And as he grows up, he gets taken into this band of thieves who specifically target the rich. So their way of robbing people is not, you know, cutting purses on the street. It's long cons and political schemes and, you know, learning 15 different languages and stuff like that. So it's really an amazing book. In this first installment, we follow this group of thieves as they take on a job that is maybe more than they can chew. The next prompt is Negroni, which is a book with a love triangle. Now, I actually have also made a Negroni on my channel in my Booktube Bartender videos. It's a drink that has slowly grown on me. It has a very unique flavor, but I like that this is the love triangle prompt because the more you kind of get used to Negronis, and in my opinion, if you stir them well and kind of let the flavors settle into each other, it makes this amazing mix. And, you know, this drink has Campari in it, so it's Campari, gin, and vermouth, and these are all very strong flavors, but like I said, when they mix together, it has a very nice blend to it. I'm starting to enjoy them, which is the same as a love triangle, right? So if a love triangle is done well, it can blend really well together and be an integrated part of the story. If it's not done well, you just kind of hate its existence, you know? For me, a love triangle that I loved, that I thought was done well, was the love triangle in The Remnant Chronicles. I talked about this series a lot on my channel last year, but I binge read this entire series at the beginning of last year. Maybe 2 years ago now. Oh my God. It was 2 years ago. Bless my heart. Anyway, now that I've had a little bit of a existential crisis on camera about how quickly time has progressed, this is a series that is really close to my heart. I love it. I don't have it physically yet, but I definitely want to one day. In the first book, The Kiss of Deception, we follow a princess who runs away rather than marry the prince for a political marriage because she just doesn't want to do that. And then the prince and an assassin both are sent to pursue her. The problem is we don't know who is the prince and who is the assassin. So the story kind of, you know, revolves around who is who, and it's definitely a very clear love triangle. What I love the most about this love triangle, though, is how it's handled in later books. I think it's done so well, the conclusions to this. I highly recommend picking up these books if you want something that's like a quicker read. These are very easy to blow through, but that also handles these tropes in a bit more of a mature way, in my opinion. Next prompt is a Bay Breeze, a heartwarming, light, chill vibes book. The base spirit in a Bay Breeze is vodka, which is not my favorite spirit, but I will admit that nothing matches fruit flavors like vodka. So this drink has cranberry juice, pineapple juice, and vodka, and you really can't go wrong with the fruit combination with vodka. So I am a fan of this drink if I'm on the beach, if I'm just chilling, you know, I love cranberry juice anyway. So big fan of this. Does have light, you know, beachy vibes. So I wanted to do 2 books for this prompt. The first one is Wondersmith by Jessica Townsend. Now this is the naked hardback for Wondersmith. I have the dust jacket elsewhere in my house, but I can't be bothered to get it. Plus, I like to display it on my shelf looking like this because it's gorgeous. But this is the second book in the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend. And the first book was good. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. But this second book, Wondersmith, I loved this book. It was so whimsical and fun and joyful and it was just heartwarming, as this prompt says. It's incredible. This is a middle grade series whose main character, Morgan Crow, is a cursed child. She's supposed to die on her 11th birthday, but instead of dying, she gets whisked away to this magical world of Nevermore, where she has to compete in magical trials to enter this magical school. And like I said, this is the second book, so I can't say anything too specific without doing any spoilers, but you know, this middle grade series is it's so good. If you need something to lift your spirits and just transport you to another world, this is the series to pick up. The second book I'm going to talk about is No by Jun Aida. This is a Japanese picture book written by the artist, Jun Aida. So this book explores the world of whimsy and kind of, if we look deeper at something, there's another layer of magic to it. So this book is called No, and No is the possessive in Japanese. So if we look at the first page, we have watashi no. So no being the possessive, watashi is I, so put them together, you get my, right? So she's saying my. Okiniri no koto no. Okiniri means favorite, coat is coat, so my favorite coat. Then on the next page, we look into her favorite jacket's pocket, and what's in there? It's a little castle. And what's in that castle? Let's find out. So this is just a sweet book about whimsy and finding, you know, magic at things as you look closer at them. So the art is also stunning. I love Jun Aida's art. I have a large collection of his art at my house. So in each picture, there is one detail that we go further into. But there's so many little details and things to find in here that you can just get lost in these pictures sometimes for me, upwards of 20 minutes, just looking at all the little things. And every time you look, you find something new, you know? So I like to read this book every couple weeks. I just sit down with it and look at a couple pages of it. And it just brings me joy. So I know that this is not super popular outside of Japan, but I highly recommend this book if you can get your hands on it. He also has a more famous work called Michi, where, you know, it's basically his art expanded to towns. So we have 2 characters who are walking towards each other, and eventually they meet each other in one of these whimsical towns. So anything by Jun Aida really just gives me those lighthearted, warm, wonderful feelings, and I highly recommend his work to anyone. The next prompt is The Dark and Stormy. This is for a book that is dark, thrilling, menacing, has those kind of stormy vibes. I love this drink. I'm a huge fan of ginger. So this is a drink made with rum, dark rum, ginger beer, and lime. And it is divine. I love it. So for this one, I had to pick a book that I loved as well. And that for me was Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. This is one of the first horror novels I've ever read. This is also the other pen name for Shauna Maguire, who wrote the Wayward Children series. This book is amazing. It's about killer mermaids. So this book is about a group of people who go out into the Mariana Trench to investigate what happened to a boat that just disappeared there years ago. And our main character's sister was on that boat, so she is personally invested in figuring out what happened. And there's a bunch of people on this boat who want to investigate whether mermaids exist. And let me tell you, they find them. And it is so good. This book is dark, menacing, creepy. You feel like there's a storm coming the whole time. And when it comes, it comes. The last prompt is a martini, a classics recommendation. Then the martini is very classic, you know, shaken, not stirred, please, James Bond, right? But as I mentioned, gin is not my favorite, so I'm not a huge fan of this. But I am a fan of classics, and one that I'd like to recommend that I don't see many people talk about is The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. This is considered by many to be the first mystery novel. It's written in Victorian times. I haven't read it for a really long time, so I don't remember details of it, but I do remember it sticking out among all of the other classics that I was reading at the time as one that I really, really enjoyed. I would highly recommend people check it out if you like mysteries. Obviously, it's written like a classic, so don't expect a modern thriller story, but I just remember the intrigue in this book was really good, and I wasn't able to figure out the ending, which I really enjoyed. Also, The Woman in White by him, I remember really liking as well. So I would. Okay guys, so unfortunately my camera died just before I was able to film my outro. So we're gonna do this on my phone because I don't have time to record later once my camera's charged. So, you know, here we go. So that concludes my bar and bookcase tag. Thank you so much for tagging me, Eric. I will again be sure to leave links up above and down below to my Booktube Bartender videos that I make. I definitely plan on continuing the series, so you can look forward to new content in that regard going forward. But I had a lot of fun filming this tag. So let me know in the comments down below what your favorite drink is, if it was on this list, if it's not. And if you agree with my picks, if you've read any of these books, I'd love to hear your opinions. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that bell. It really helps me with the algorithm, and I appreciate it. But for now, I'm gonna head out. Jane!